Today we will be talking about the demand curve, how to derive it, and we are also going to talk about the concept of elasticity of demand. After we are done with that, we will move on to income in kind. Okay, this is the mind map for today's video. Okay, there is a handful of information here. So please make sure you download this on quickeconomics.wordpress.com. Let's start with the definition of a demand curve. What is a demand curve? A demand curve is a graph that shows the relationship between a goods price and its quantity demanded by consumers. Let me give you a graphic example. Okay, this is a typical demand curve, which is usually downward sloping. Okay, and the y-axis is going to be the price of X. The x-axis is going to be the quantity of X demanded. Assuming that now a firm sells good X at the price Px0, we draw a dotted line horizontally until it touches the demand curve at point A, and we bring it down, and this is the quantity that consumers are demanding, which is X0. As the price decreases to Px1, the quantity demanded will increase. It makes sense. As an economic good becomes cheaper, there will be a higher demand. We now move on to elasticity. What is elasticity? Okay, before we go on to the definition, take note that this will be the notation for price elasticity or demand. And the definition would be the sensitivity of demand affected by price. Now, there are two extreme ends of elasticity, okay, and on the left side over here we have got perfectly inelastic demand. On the right hand side here we have perfectly elastic demand. When a consumer's demand is inelastic, it shows that his demand is not sensitive to price. He is price insensitive, and it is the opposite for an elastic demand, which is price sensitive. This is best illustrated using graphs. Okay, so here we have got the respective graphs for the respective elasticity types. Okay, now before we go on, please take note that the elasticity does not determine the gradient of the demand curve. Okay, this is a very important point to take note. Now, let's explain inelastic first. So when we talk about a consumer being perfectly inelastic, it goes to show that he is not sensitive to price at all. So you can see that on this curve over here, no matter what price it is, okay, no matter what price the firm charges, sorry, no matter what price the firm charges, the demand will always be constant at this particular point here. So, as we move on to away from being perfectly inelastic, okay, we become inelastic. Okay, so there is a little bit of sensitivity in price, but not so much. On the other end, if the consumer's demand is perfectly elastic, okay, that means they are very sensitive to price. So when you are very sensitive about a price, there will only be one particular price that you are willing to pay, which is over here. Okay, so all this is in between the two extremes, and when my elasticity is under unity, which is equals to 1, it shows that, you know, I'm just in between elastic and inelastic. Okay, so moving on. Okay, we will now learn how to derive the demand curve from the budget constraint as well as the indifference curve. Okay, I'm sorry, I had to drink some water over there. Okay, step 1. You will identify point B for normal good, inferior good, and given good. This is what we have learned in the previous videos. Step 2. We will expand the graph vertically by adding a price of X versus quantity of X graph below the X versus Y graph. Step 3. We will mark out the respective price of X and quantity of X points for normal good, inferior good, and given good. And lastly, we will draw the demand curve. Okay, we now go on to a demonstration with explanation. Okay, we will now start by changing the price of X. Like what we usually do, we will decrease the price of X. So what happens is that the budget constraint is going to shift outwards. Okay, now we will mark out the Hicksian substitution effect by drawing an imaginary budget line which is tangent to the original indifference curve, which will be over here at point C. We will draw a vertical line along point C, okay, and we will now decide whether real income has decreased or increased. The imaginary budget line is below the new budget line, which means that real income has increased. So if I'm buying more X going towards this side, that means X is a normal good. If I'm going that way, X is an inferior good. Okay, so now X for point B, if it's a normal good, it can lie anywhere along this point. Okay, I shall change my marker because apparently there's no ink left. Okay, for an inferior good, it will be on this side. So it can be either here or here, where it becomes a given good. Okay, so what we do next, okay, which is step 2, we will expand the graph vertically by adding a price of X against a quantity of X graph below the X and Y graph. Price of X. Okay, we will now mark out, okay, the respective price of X, okay, and the X points for the normal good, inferior good, and given good. So we always start with the original first. Assuming that this is Px0, this is a price, okay, we are going to expand downwards x0. So this was the initial equilibrium, x0, okay, at this particular price. So we have got 1 point over here. Now, what if it is a normal good? We know that the price of X has dropped. So it will move down from Px0 to Px1. And what we do is we are going to draw a horizontal line over here, which will make it easier for us to mark out all the points. Okay, and we start one by one. If it's a normal good, okay, the consumer will end up at B, and we bring that down. Okay, so this is x1, this is also x1, so we have 1 point over here. We are going to connect these two lines, and there we have it, the demand curve for a normal good. Okay, now what if it's an inferior good? Same thing, we will bring down the point from BI down to the next graph. If this is x2, this is also x2. And the point is over here, and we have another demand curve for an inferior good. Lastly, moving on to the given good, which is at point BG, we will bring down point BG here, and if this is x3, this is going to be x3 as well, this point over here. So we have 1 point here, 1 point here, and there we go. We have the demand curve for a given good. Okay, so this is how to derive the demand curves. Easy? Next, the last thing before we go on to income in kind, we will now attempt to prove price elasticity of demand using the budget constraint. Okay, take note, okay, that if the demand is elastic, Okay, that means the change in price is lesser than the change in quantity demanded. That's because if it's elastic, it shows that the consumer, okay, is sensitive to price. Therefore, a small change in price will cause a big change in the quantity demanded. And the consumer spending is equals to price of X multiplied by X, follows the direction of change of the larger component, which is quantity demanded. So for example, if the quantity demanded has dropped, that means spending has dropped. And likewise the other way around. If the demand is inelastic, okay, the change in price will be more than the change in quantity demanded, because the consumer is not price sensitive. You need a big price to cause a small change in the quantity demanded, and the spending follows the change in price. So if let's say the change in price is increasing, there's a larger price now, that means spending has increased. Okay, moving on, this is the budget equation. Price of X multiplied by X plus the price of Y multiplied by Y equals to I naught. In every economic analysis that we have been doing for chapter 2, what we will do is we will decrease the price of X and we will keep the price of Y constant as well as income constant. So the only thing that has changed intentionally is the price of X. After we have done this, we will need to look at whether X and Y are complements or substitutes. Because if they are both complements, okay, I decrease the price of X, naturally the quantity demanded for X will increase. And as the quantity of X increases, Y will increase as well because they are complements. So therefore, if this is the case, then the spending on Y must increase, because with price of Y is constant and Y has gone up, so this entire equation has gone up. Therefore, the spending on X must decrease so as to keep income constant. And if this is the case, where the spending on X decreases, okay, and the price of X decreases, so these two are in the same direction, okay, going back to this, we now know that the elasticity is less than 1. It is inelastic because we know about this. Spending follows the change in price, the direction. Okay, spending of X has dropped. Price of X has dropped. So they both move in the same direction. Therefore, we know that the elasticity is inelastic. It's less than 1. Now, what if there are gross substitutes? Okay, looking at this over here, okay, the price of X has decreased. Naturally, the price of the quantity demanded for X will increase. And if there are gross substitutes, the demand works in opposite directions. That means the quantity of Y demanded for Y would decrease. So then the spending on Y will decrease. Reason being, this has been constant, this goes down. So this naturally goes down. For this to go down and this to be constant, this has to go up. Therefore, the spending on X must have increased to keep the income constant. We know that the spending has increased and the quantity demanded for X has increased, so these two move in the same direction. Referring back to this, we know that the demand for X is elastic. So this is how to prove the price elasticity of demand using the budget equation. Okay, we will now move on to income in kind. Okay, hi guys, this is a really quick one. Okay, the purpose of this video, right, is to discuss when do we use income in kind. Okay, for a question that actually wants us to analyze individual behavior, individual choice, consumption theory. Okay, when do we actually use income in kind? Because we usually use money, so our analysis will be very different. Okay, so now let's look at the first point. Okay, well, when we normally analyze, using the Higgsian definition of real income, when X is a normal good, okay, the substitution effect and the income effect will move in the same direction. Okay, well, we can actually change that. Okay, because if we use income in kind, and later I'll show you exactly how to use it. Okay, you can actually show that a normal good okay, can actually have the substitution effect and the income effect moving in opposite directions. Okay, and next thing is, if let's say they ask you, can the normal good have a upward sloping demand curve? Well, it's possible, I will not be showing you this, but because I hope that you will go and experience it by yourself, go and try it out, experiment. You can actually have upward sloping demand curve if you use income in kind. And lastly, obviously, of course, when the question says that, if the individual is paid in terms of X and Y and blah 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 blah, okay, then you will use income in kind. Okay, so let's just do a very simple question, and we will try and prove that for a normal good, okay, the substitution effect and the income effect can actually move in opposite directions. Okay, so let's start out by drawing out the normal model. Okay, now this is X and this is Y, and this is my initial endowment, for example. Okay, so initially the fellow will have YO. Oh, let's just call it XE, and the guy will have YE. So initially this was a guy, okay, he just was born with this amount of stuff, okay, and then we have our budget line like this, okay, which actually is dependent on the prices lah. So down here we can put PX over PY, okay, how much they cost, and this price is in real terms, so basically how many X for Y and how many X for one Y and how many Y for one X. Okay, so initially the guy has got this amount, but we cannot put our indifference curve here, because if that's the case, then our analysis will be pointless, right? So what we're going to do is, the individual, imagine that he's got all this stuff, and okay, let's say maybe X is an Xbox, okay, and Y is I don't know lah, alcohol or something like that, okay, alcohol. So maybe this guy is an alcoholic, he will want to have more alcohol than Xbox. So what he's going to do is that he's going to take all these Xboxes, right, and he's going to sell it for alcohol, okay, yeah. So he'll be ending up somewhere here. So that's why our indifference curve will be over here. Okay, and this is our point A. Okay, so this is the initial startup. Okay, now let's introduce a change so that we can start our analysis proper. For example, the price of X has gone down. Okay, so what's going to happen is that when the price of X has gone down, obviously you can buy more X. Okay, you can buy more Xboxes, which is good. And he can buy less alcohol. Why? Because when the price of Xbox goes down, he go and sell this Xbox, he get back lesser money to go and buy alcohol. That's why he can buy lesser alcohol. So what's going to happen is that the budget line is going to shift this way. Okay, yeah, it's a bit long, but don't care, don't worry. Okay, so now this is our new budget line, alright? And we now start our analysis proper. Okay, what we usually do for the Higgsian definition of real income, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to draw like a imaginary budget line tangent to the indifference curve, and we call this point C, right? Okay, so now we can identify the substitution effect, okay? So the distance between here and here, okay, this XO and this X1, okay, is the substitution effect, okay? Now, what does the substitution effect tell us? Just a quick refresher. The substitution tells us, okay, the reaction of the consumer when it's a given change in price. Okay, so we don't care how much money this fella has. Okay, as long as he just imagine he got unlimited money. Okay, so he got unlimited money, the price of X go down. Obviously, I want to buy more lah. Okay, this is normal human reaction. But what does the income effect tell us? The income effect tells us, how we should react given the current budget constraint that we have. So for a normal good, if I got more money, obviously I want to buy more of it, right? Okay, so for an inferior good, it works the other way around. Okay, after drawing this line over here, okay, so we can now identify that when we buy more of X, okay, we can see that from here, right, because the imaginary budget line is on top of the new budget line, there has been a drop in real income. Right, because you see, this budget line is outside, so I mean the higher up you go, you have more money, so that is why real income has dropped. Okay, so that's why if I'm buying more X, okay, it just tells me that my X is an inferior good. Okay, and if you go the other way around, X is a normal good, because as my income is dropping, I buy less. It makes economic sense if it's a normal good. Okay, so now we can see that anywhere within this region, okay, I can put my point B. I can either put my point B here, I can put my point B here. So now you can see that this point over here, right? Okay, if you move, we are moving here now. Can't you see that the income effect, okay, and the substitution effect is moving in opposite directions? It is. And now this brings me to the next point. Can the normal good demand curve be outward sloping? Can. You see, if let's say the income effect is more than the substitution effect and it lands me over here at my other point B, okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to, okay, expand this graph out. Oh shit. Okay, expand this graph out, okay. That's a simple one, okay, X, okay, and this is price. Originally I was at PO, okay, and this was my initial point here, okay, this is X0, okay, and if let's say the price has dropped, okay, now this is P1, and this is my new point B over here, okay, X call it X2, okay, X2, 1 point here, see, it's outward sloping. Alright, okay, so yeah, that was a fast one. Yeah, hopefully you have benefited from this video. Thank you very much.